The coffee splashed hot against Valera's hand as the subway jolted, but he barely noticed the pain. His mind was on the $37 in his bank account and the 5 days until payday, with Lily's asthma medication refill due tomorrow. "Daddy, look at that lady," his 7-year-old daughter whispered, tugging at his worn jacket sleeve. "She's crying." Shane glanced where Lily pointed. A woman in an expensive-looking navy suit sat alone on the subway bench, her head bent low as her shoulders shook slightly. Most New Yorkers were deliberately avoiding looking at her, creating that invisible bubble of privacy the city was known for. Honey. It's not polite to stare," he murmured, shifting his backpack filled with painting supplies. The extra freelance jobs were killing his sleep schedule, but the maintenance position at the elementary school barely covered rent. "But Daddy, you always say we should help people when they're sad," Lily insisted. Her wide brown eyes, so much like her mother's, had been looking up at him earnestly. Shane sighed, knowing he was caught in his own life lesson. "You're right, Lil Bear." The subway screeched to a halt and several passengers hurried out, but the crying woman remained seated, seemingly unaware of her stop. "Miss," Shane approached cautiously, Lily's small hand firmly in his. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The woman looked up, startled, quickly wiping tears from her face. Despite her red-rimmed eyes, Shane was struck by how striking she was: warm brown skin, high cheekbones, and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to assess him instantly. "I'm fine," she said automatically, but her voice cracked on the words. Lily let go of Shane's hand and moved closer. "My daddy says it's okay to be sad sometimes, but it helps to talk about it. I'm Lily, I'm 7. A small, reluctant smile tugged at the woman's lips. "That's very wise for 7. Her gaze shifted to Shane, a question in her eyes. "Shane Valera," he introduced himself with a slight shrug. "And apparently my daughter is more socially adept than I am." "Finola Hayes," she replied. "And she hesitated, looking around at the nearly empty subway car. "I just got some unexpected news. Family stuff. It's nothing, really." "Nothing doesn't usually make people cry on the F train," Shane offered gently. The subway announcer crackled overhead, announcing the next stop, Shane and Lily's stop. "This is us," Shane said, feeling strangely reluctant to leave this woman alone. He hesitated, then acted on impulse. "Look, there's a decent coffee shop just up from the station. If you want to talk or just not be alone right now, we're heading there before Lily's dance class." Finola looked genuinely surprised by the offer, and for a moment Shane thought she would refuse. Then she nodded slowly. "That's actually very kind, thank you." As they exited the subway together, Shane had no idea that the woman walking beside them ran one of the city's fastest-growing tech companies, or that his simple act of kindness would change both their lives forever. The coffee shop was a small, family-owned place tucked between a laundromat and a bodega. Lily skipped ahead, clearly comfortable with the routine. "We come here every Tuesday before dance," Shane explained, holding the door open for Finola. "Mrs. Patel lets Lily have hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. And she gives Daddy free refills because he's always sleepy," Lily added helpfully, earning a gentle eye roll from Shane. "Working 2 jobs will do that," he said, guiding them to a corner table. "Lily, why don't you go say hi to Mrs. Patel while I talk with Miss Hayes?" Once Lily was happily chatting with the shop owner at the counter, Shane turned to Finola. "So, do you want to talk about it? Sometimes it's easier with a stranger." Finola seemed to be debating internally before she sighed. "My father died 6 months ago. Heart attack. Today I found out he had another family, a whole other life in Philadelphia. A half-sister called me out of the blue." "Wow," Shane said, genuinely surprised. "That's a lot to process." "The thing is," Finola continued, absently tracing the rim of her cup, "I was always so sure I knew him. He raised me after my mom died when I was 12. I thought we were close." Her voice caught. "Now I'm questioning everything," Shane nodded, thinking carefully before responding. "After my wife died 3 years ago, Lily kept asking questions I couldn't answer. Why did Mommy have to go? Will you go too? I realized sometimes there are no good answers, just the truth that life is complicated." "I'm sorry about your wife," Finola said softly. Shane accepted her sympathy with a nod. Beth had leukemia. We knew it was coming, but you're never really prepared. He glanced over at Lily, now carefully carrying a mug of hot chocolate back to their table. Having Lily got me through it. Having responsibility for someone else meant I couldn't fall apart. Lily placed her mug carefully on the table, a mountain of mini marshmallows floating on top. Mrs. Patel says your coffee is coming, Daddy, and she's making a special tea for Miss Hayes because she looks sad. That's very thoughtful, Finola said, smiling genuinely for the first time since they'd met. Thank you, Lily. While Lily enthusiastically detailed the plot of a book she was reading in school, Shane observed Finola discreetly. Beneath her obviously expensive clothes and the composed way she carried herself, there was something genuine about her that resonated with him. When she laughed at Lily's dramatic retelling, the sound was warm and unrestrained. So what do you do, Shane? Finola asked when Lily paused for breath and a sip of hot chocolate. I'm the maintenance supervisor at Ridgewood Elementary during the day, he answered. And I do painting jobs nights and weekends when I can get them. I've always been good with my hands. He immediately felt his face warm at the unintended implication. I mean building things, fixing things. Finola's smile turned slightly teasing. I understood what you meant. What about you? Shane asked, desperate to change the subject. A brief shadow crossed her face. I run a company. Tech development. Like computers and stuff, Lily asked, her face smeared with chocolate. Exactly, Finola nodded. Computers and stuff. Shane checked his watch. We should head out, Lil. Dance class starts in 20 minutes and Miss Prentice doesn't like when we're late. Can Miss Hayes come watch me? Lily asked hopefully. I'm doing a special twirl today. Shane started to explain that Finola probably had more important things to do, but she cut in gently. I'd love to see your special twirl, Lily, if your dad doesn't mind. Surprised, Shane found himself agreeing. As they walked the 3 blocks to the community center where Lily's class was held, he couldn't help wondering why someone like Finola Hayes, clearly successful and sophisticated, was spending her afternoon with them. Little did he know, Finola was asking herself the same question. Yet something about Shane's straightforward kindness and obvious devotion to his daughter had pierced through the carefully constructed walls she'd built around herself since taking over as CEO of Haven Tech 3 years ago. As they watched Lily's dance class through the observation window, standing closer than strangers normally would, neither realized they were at the beginning of something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, trust, and what truly mattered in life. She's very good, Finola commented as Lily executed her promised twirl with more enthusiasm than precision. She gets her coordination from her mother, Shane said with a proud smile. Beth was a dancer in college, not professionally or anything, but she loved it. And what did you study? Finola asked. Shane shifted uncomfortably. I didn't go to college. Started working construction with my uncle right out of high school, then Beth got pregnant with Lily, and we needed stability. The school job has benefits, which we needed for Beth's treatments later. Instead of the judgment he half expected, Finola nodded thoughtfully. That's admirable, putting your family first like that. It wasn't a sacrifice, Shane said simply. It was the right thing to do. When the class ended, Lily bounded over, pink-cheeked and excited. Did you see my twirl, Miss Hayes? Miss Prentice says I'm getting better. I did. It was wonderful, Finola said with genuine warmth. Before she could say more, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I'm sorry, but I have to take this. She stepped away, and Shane could hear her voice shift into something more authoritative as she answered. Watching her, he noticed how her entire demeanor changed, shoulders squaring, chin lifting slightly. Whoever she was talking to was getting a very different Finola than the vulnerable woman from the subway. When she returned, her expression was apologetic. I have to go. There's a situation at work. Is everything okay? Shane asked. Just the usual fires to put out, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She knelt to Lily's level. Thank you for letting me watch your dancing, Lily. It was the best part of my day. Lily beamed, then impulsively threw her arms around Finola's neck. Shane started to pull her back, but Finola returned the hug without hesitation. Standing, she reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. I'd like to thank you properly for your kindness today. Maybe I could take you both to dinner sometime. Shane hesitated, looking at the embossed card. Finola Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, Haven Technologies. You're a CEO, he asked, unable to hide his surprise. Something flashed in her eyes' disappointment. Does that change things? No, he said quickly. It's just… You're probably very busy. I make time for things that matter, she replied quietly. Before he could formulate a response, Finola's phone buzzed again. I really do have to go, call me. She gave him an uncertain smile before heading toward the exit. Daddy, I like her, Lily declared as they watched Finola leave. She smells like the flowers Mommy used to put in our apartment. Shane stared at the business card in his hand, wondering what someone like Finola Hayes could possibly see in a struggling single dad like him. He didn't call the next day or the day after. The card sat on his dresser, taunting him each morning as he got ready for work. By Friday, he'd convinced himself their brief connection was just a moment of vulnerability on her part, nothing more. Then his truck broke down on the way to pick up Lily from her friend's house. It's the transmission, the mechanic said grimly after towing it to his shop. Looking at about $2,100, give or take. Shane's stomach dropped. He didn't have that kind of money, and without the truck, he couldn't get to his weekend painting jobs in the suburbs, which meant he wouldn't have the extra income he was counting on. Can I make payments? He asked, already knowing the answer. The mechanic's sympathetic look said it all. Boss doesn't do financing. Sorry, man. Shane stepped outside, trying to figure out his options. His credit cards were maxed out from Beth's medical bills, and he'd already borrowed from his uncle twice this year. As he scrolled through his phone contacts, trying to think of someone who might loan him the money, his thumb hovered over the entry he'd added but never used, Finola Hayes. Pride warred with desperation. Finally, practicality won out. He needed his truck for work, and work meant providing for Lily. To his surprise, she answered on the second ring. Shane. Her voice held a note of pleased surprise. I was beginning to think you'd thrown my card away. I considered it, he admitted. Look, I'm sorry to call like this, but I'm in a bind. My truck's transmission died and where are you? She cut in. Joe's Auto on Vernon Boulevard, but that's not why I'm calling. I just need to know if you meant what you said about dinner. I'd like to take you up on it and maybe we could talk about. I might need a loan. The words felt like gravel in his throat. There was a brief silence. Stay where you are. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Before he could protest, she hung up. Shane stood there, feeling a mixture of relief and humiliation. He'd called a woman he barely knew a CEO, no less to ask for money. This wasn't how he'd wanted their next interaction to go. 18 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Finola stepped out, dressed more casually than he'd seen her before in dark jeans and a simple blouse, but somehow still looking effortlessly elegant. Where's Lily? She asked after greeting him. At a friend's house. I was on my way to pick her up when the truck died, he explained, suddenly aware of his oil-stained work clothes and the 3-day stubble on his chin. Finola nodded, then turned toward the garage. Let's talk to the mechanic. Finola, wait, Shane caught her arm gently. I didn't call you so you'd come rescue me. I thought maybe I could work something out with you. I can do painting, repairs, whatever you need around your house. She looked at him for a long moment. Shane, let me help you, not because I expect anything in return, but because I want to. If it makes you feel better, you can pay me back over time, interest-free. Before he could argue further, she walked into the garage, asking for the mechanic. Shane followed, half admiring, half alarmed at how quickly she took charge of the situation. 30 minutes later, they were driving to pick up Lily, arrangements made for the truck to be repaired by Monday. Finola had insisted on paying the mechanic directly, waving away Shane's protests with a simple, we'll figure it out. Thank you, Shane said as they pulled up to Lily's friend's house. I don't know how to repay you. Have dinner with me tonight, Finola suggested. Both of you, no agenda, just food and conversation. Shane studied her face, trying to understand her motives. Why are you doing this? You barely know us. Finola's expression softened. Because the day we met, I was having one of the worst moments of my adult life, questioning everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. And a stranger and his daughter showed me more genuine compassion than most of the people I interact with daily. She paused. Do you know how rare that is? To meet someone who helps without wanting something in return. Put that way, Shane couldn't argue. He nodded slowly. Dinner sounds good. But somewhere kid-friendly, please. Lily gets cranky if there's nothing but grown-up food. Finola laughed, the sound lighting up her entire face. I know just the place. Later that evening, as he watched Lily eagerly explaining her school project to Finola, who listened with genuine interest, Shane felt something shift inside him. The weight he'd been carrying since Beth died, the constant struggle, the loneliness of being solely responsible for everything seemed lighter somehow. Finola caught his eye across the table and smiled, a private gesture just for him, and Shane realized with a start that he was in dangerous territory. He was beginning to care for this woman, who lived in a world so different from his that they might as well be from different planets. Shane. Finola's voice brought him back to the present. Lily was asking if you'd help her with her science project on Sunday. Of course, he said automatically, then added, but I usually pick up painting jobs on weekends. Because of the truck, Finola guessed. Don't worry about this weekend. Consider it a break, Shane tensed. I don't need charity. It's not charity to help a friend, Finola countered, then hesitated. At least I hope we're friends. The hopeful note in her voice disarmed him. Yes, we're friends, he conceded. Good, she said, relaxing slightly. Then as your friend, I'd like to offer you a business proposition. Shane raised an eyebrow. What kind of proposition? My company's headquarters needs repainting. The contractor we hired did a terrible job. Would you be interested in taking it on? It's a legitimate job with fair pay. Shane considered her offer. I'm just one guy, Finola. A corporate headquarters would require a team. You could hire people, she suggested. Manage the project. From what I've seen of your work ethic, you do a far better job than the last company. He narrowed his eyes. What do you mean, what you've seen? You haven't seen any of my work. Finola had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have looked up your reviews online. You have an impressive 4.9-star rating on Service Match. You researched me. Shane wasn't sure whether to be flattered or concerned. I research everyone, Finola admitted. Occupational hazard of being in business, but I was curious about you even before today. She reached across the table, her fingers lightly touching his. I'm not offering you a job out of pity, Shane. I'm offering it because I think you're the right person for it. The warmth of her fingers against his sent a jolt through him that he hadn't felt in years. Against his better judgment, he found himself agreeing to meet at her office on Monday to discuss the project. As Finola drove them home later, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, worn out from the excitement of the day. She's wonderful, Finola said softly, glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror. You're doing an amazing job with her. I try, Shane said, his voice equally quiet. Sometimes I worry it's not enough that she's missing out by not having a mother. From what I can see, what she has is a father who would move heaven and earth for her, Finola replied. That counts for a lot. When they arrived at Shane's modest apartment building, he hesitated before getting out of the car. Thank you for everything today, but Finola, if we're going to be friends, I need to know there aren't strings attached to your help. No strings, she promised. But I hope you'll let me get to know you better, both of you. Shane carefully lifted a sleeping Lily from the back seat. As he straightened, Finola stood close, her expression open and vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen since that first day on the subway. Good night, Shane, she whispered, leaning in to place a soft, quick kiss on his cheek before stepping back. As she drove away, Shane stood on the sidewalk, his daughter in his arms and the ghost of Finola's kiss lingering on his skin, wondering if he was heading toward another heartbreak or something unexpectedly wonderful. Monday morning found Shane standing in the lobby of a gleaming high-rise, feeling distinctly out of place in his best shirt, and jeans the closest thing to business attire he owned. The security guard eyed him skeptically until he mentioned Finola's name, at which point the man's demeanor changed completely. Miss Hayes is expecting you, Mr. Valera, 18th floor. In the elevator, Shane tried to calm his nerves. It was just a business meeting, he told himself. The fact that his pulse quickened at the thought of seeing Finola again was irrelevant. When the doors opened, he stepped into a bustling office space, all glass and chrome and people moving with purpose. A young woman approached him immediately. "Mr. Valera, I'm Jenna, Miss Hayes's assistant. She's finishing up a call. Can I get you anything while you wait?" "No, thanks," Shane replied, taking in the workspace. The walls were indeed in need of repainting, with visible patches and inconsistent color. His professional eye immediately began assessing the scope of the job. "Shane." Finola's voice drew his attention. She stood in a doorway, dressed in a tailored pantsuit that somehow emphasized rather than concealed her femininity. "Thank you for coming." She led him to her office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. Unlike the rest of the office, her walls were painted a rich, warm blue. "I see why you weren't worried about your office," Shane commented. "This looks professionally done." "It was," Finola confirmed, gesturing for him to sit. "I had it done separately when the main job was botched." "Which brings us to why you're here." For the next hour, they discussed the painting project in detail. Shane was impressed by Finola's clear understanding of what she wanted and her willingness to defer to his expertise on execution. By the end of their meeting, they had agreed on terms that were more than generous. "We have a deal then?" Finola asked, extending her hand. Shane took it, feeling the same spark he'd felt at dinner. "We do. I'll need to hire at least 3 other painters. We can start next week." "Perfect," she said, but didn't release his hand immediately. "And now that business is concluded, would you like to have lunch?" The next month passed in a blur for Shane. Between his day job at the school, overseeing the painting project at Haven Technologies on evenings and weekends, and making time for Lily, he barely had a moment to breathe. Yet somehow, Finola managed to become a regular part of their lives. She joined them for pizza nights, helped Lily with her science project, and twice took Shane to lunch at restaurants he could never have afforded on his own. Each time they met, the connection between them deepened. Shane found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone since Beth dyed his fears of failing as a parent, his abandoned dreams of owning his own home renovation business, the guilt he sometimes felt for being alive when Beth wasn't. In turn, Finola revealed her own vulnerabilities, the pressure of being a female CEO in a male-dominated industry, her complicated grief over her father's deception, her loneliness despite being surrounded by people daily. "I've never told anyone these things," she admitted one evening as they walked through a park near his apartment, Lily running ahead to the playground. "My board members would probably have a collective heart attack if they knew their CEO had actual human emotions." "Is that why you haven't mentioned me to anyone at work?" Shane asked. He had noticed during the painting project that she maintained a professional distance when others were around, though her eyes often sought his across the room. Finola stopped walking. "Is that what you think?" "That I'm embarrassed by you, aren't you?" Shane challenged gently. "The maintenance guy who's painting your office? No," she said firmly. "Never, She hesitated. "I've learned to keep my personal life separate from work. The business press can be brutal, especially to women executives. Any hint of a relationship becomes fodder for speculation about my focus and commitment." Shane nodded slowly, accepting her explanation even as part of him wondered if there was more to it. "So we are in a relationship, then?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. Finola's face softened. "I'd like to think we're heading that way, unless I've been misreading things." "You haven't," Shane assured her, reaching for her hand. "But Finola, you have to know I come as a package deal. Lily will always be my priority." "I wouldn't want it any other way," she said, squeezing his hand. "Lily is part of what makes you who you are, and for the record, I adore her." As if on cue, Lily called from the playground, "Daddy, Miss Hayes, look how high I can swing." They both turned to watch her, their hands still intertwined. It was a perfect moment, one that made Shane both hopeful and terrified. Because the more he fell for Finola, the more he had to lose. 2 weeks later, the painting project was complete, and Shane found himself at a crossroads. Without the regular excuse to see Finola at work, would their relationship continue to grow? Or would she drift back to her world while he remained in his? His fears were put to rest when Finola invited both him and Lily to her home for dinner, the first time she'd extended such an invitation. As they drove to her address in his newly repaired truck, Shane tried to prepare Lily for what to expect. Miss Hayes's home might be very different from ours, Lil. Much bigger and fancier. Lily considered this. Does that mean she has more toys? Shane laughed. Probably different kinds of toys. Grown-up ones. When they arrived at Finola's brownstone in an upscale neighborhood, Shane's assumptions were both confirmed and challenged. The home was indeed beautiful and clearly expensive, but as Finola welcomed them inside, he was struck by how warm and personal the space felt, not the sterile showcase he had half expected. "You have a piano," Lily exclaimed, spotting the baby grand in the living room. "Do you play?" Finola asked. Lily shook her head. "Mommy did. Daddy has her old keyboard, but it doesn't sound as pretty." Shane watched as Finola sat on the bench and patted the space beside her. "Would you like me to teach you a simple song?" As Lily eagerly joined her, Shane wandered around the room, taking in the details. Photos lined one wall. Finola with an older man he assumed was her father, Finola in a graduation cap and gown, Finola with groups of women at what looked like charity events. A normal life, documented in normal ways, despite her exceptional career. The evening progressed with easy conversation over a meal that Finola admitted she'd had catered. "I can make exactly 3 dishes well," she confessed. "Anything beyond that is a public health hazard." "Daddy's a good cook," Lily offered. "He makes heart-shaped pancakes on Sundays. Does he now?" Finola smiled at Shane. "I'd like to try those someday." The simple statement held so much promise that Shane felt a lump form in his throat. After Lily was settled in the guest room with a movie, Shane and Finola retreated to her back patio with glasses of wine. "Thank you for tonight," Shane said. "It means a lot that you wanted us in your home." "I've wanted you here for weeks," Finola admitted. "I just wasn't sure if you were ready." "Ready for what?" "For this to be real," she said softly. "For us to acknowledge that what's happening between us is more than friendship." Shane set down his wine glass and moved closer to her on the patio sofa. "It's been real for me since the day you kissed my cheek outside my apartment." "That wasn't much of a kiss," Finola murmured, her eyes dropping to his lips. "No," Shane agreed, leaning in slowly. "This would be a much better example." Their first real kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as months of building connection finally found physical expression. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Finola rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling in love with you, Shane Valera," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Why?" he asked, his hand gently cupping her face. "Because I've built my life around being in control. Running a company, making decisions, managing risks. But this us, I can't control it, and I can't bear the thought of losing it." Shane understood her fear all too well. After losing Beth, he'd been so focused on survival that he'd closed off the possibility of loving again. Until Finola. "I can't promise we'll never lose each other," he said honestly. "Life taught me that lesson the hard way, but I can promise that what I feel for you is real, and that I'm willing to face that fear every day for the chance to be with you." Finola's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "When did the maintenance man get so wise?" "Around the same time the CEO started crying on the subway," he countered with a gentle smile. Their relationship blossomed over the following months. Shane began taking on more private renovation projects, building a reputation that allowed him to be more selective with his work and spend more time with Lily and Finola. For her part, Finola reorganized her schedule to create better work-life balance, sometimes bringing her laptop to Shane's apartment so they could be together while he helped Lily with homework. They weren't without challenges. There were raised eyebrows when Finola brought Shane to a corporate gala, whispers that she chose to ignore. Shane occasionally felt out of place in her world of board meetings and business dinners, just as Finola sometimes struggled to relax into the casual community of Shane's neighborhood. But they faced each hurdle together, growing stronger with each one they overcame. And through it all, Lily blossomed, delighting in having another adult who cared deeply for her while still holding the special place for her mother in her heart. 6 months after their first meeting on the subway, Shane took Lily to a jewelry store where she solemnly helped him select a ring. "Do you think Miss Hayes will like it, Daddy?" she asked as they left the store, the small box secure in his pocket. "I hope so, Lil," he said, his stomach fluttering with nerves. But you know, if she says yes, you might start calling her Finola instead of Miss Hayes. Lily considered this. Could I call her Finn, like a nickname? You'd have to ask her, Shane replied, smiling at his daughter's practical approach to potentially gaining a stepmother. That evening, at the same coffee shop where they'd first truly talked, Shane waited nervously while Lily was at a sleepover. When Finola arrived, she immediately sensed something was different. What's going on? She asked as she sat across from him. You look like you're about to jump out of your skin. Shane took a deep breath. I had this whole speech planned. About how you came into our lives when I least expected it, how you've brought joy back to me and Lily, how I never thought I could feel this way again after Beth died. That sounds like a lovely speech, Finola said, her voice gentle. Why aren't you giving it? Because none of it captures what I really want to say, Shane replied, reaching across the table for her hands. Which is simply that I love you, Finola Hayes. I love your brilliant mind and your generous heart. I love how you challenge me and accept me exactly as I am. I love watching you with Lily, and how you've become such an important part of her life too. Finola's eyes widened as Shane slipped from his chair to one knee beside the table, drawing a small box from his pocket. I know we come from different worlds. I know there will always be challenges. But I also know that what we've built together is worth fighting for every day. He opened the box, revealing the ring he and Lily had chosen. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down Finola's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. As Shane slipped the ring onto her finger, the coffee shop erupted in applause. Mrs. Patel appeared with 2 slices of cake, announcing, on the house for the happy couple. Later that night, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms in Finola's bed, she traced patterns on Shane's chest. There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about, she said. Shane tensed slightly, an old reflex when confronted with serious conversations. What is it? I've been thinking about starting a new division at Haven, focused on renovation technology. Smart home integration, eco-friendly building materials, that sort of thing. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. I'd like you to run it. Shane stared at her in surprise. Me, Finola, I barely finished high school. I don't know the first thing about running a division of a tech company. You know everything about practical application, which is exactly what we need, she countered. The tech side is covered by my existing team. What we need is someone who understands the realities of renovation and construction, who can identify what would actually be useful in the field. Are you offering me a job because you think I need one? Shane asked carefully. Because I'm doing fine with my business. I'm offering because you're the best person for it, Finola said firmly. Your insight would be invaluable. But, she added, if you're not interested, that's completely fine. I just wanted you to know the opportunity is there. Shane considered her offer. It was a chance to combine his practical experience with something innovative, to build a future that would provide security for Lily and challenge him professionally. Can I think about it? He asked finally. Of course, Finola replied, settling back against his chest. We have all the time in the world. As she drifted off to sleep in his arms, Shane marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter with a crying woman on a subway to finding a love he never expected, his life had transformed in ways he couldn't have imagined. 1 year to the day after Shane first approached Finola on the subway, they were married in a small ceremony with Lily as the flower girl. The guest list included Shane's colleagues from the school, Finola's executive team, who had finally warmed to him after seeing Finola's happiness, and even Finola's newly discovered half-sister, with whom she had built a cautious but growing relationship. Shane had ultimately accepted Finola's job offer, bringing his practical knowledge to her company's new division with surprising success. They had moved into a house midway between their former homes, larger than his apartment, but more modest than her brownstone, creating a space that was truly theirs together. As they danced at their reception, Finola whispered in his ear, "Did you ever imagine, when you saw me crying on that subway, that we'd end up here?" "Never," Shane admitted, holding her close. "I was just trying to set a good example for Lily about helping people in distress." "Well, your lesson certainly took," Finola laughed. "Last week she insisted we stop the car to help a man with a flat tire. Like father, like daughter, Shane said proudly. Speaking of which, Finola said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. How would you feel about expanding our family? Lily's been asking for a sibling. Shane stopped dancing, looking into his wife's eyes with wonder. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Finola nodded, a radiant smile spreading across her face. I took a test this morning. We're having a baby. As Shane swept her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy, he thought of that day on the subway, how a simple act of kindness had led to the greatest love story of his life. A struggling single dad and a CEO, finding in each other exactly what they needed most: acceptance, understanding, and the courage to open their hearts to love again.